And we look forward to that interview later in the show. But for now, we're joined by Mubin Sheikh. He's an ex-CSIS and RCMP operative. Thanks so much for being with us. And, you know, there's so many questions still really here than answers. I want to start with the RCMP calling this situation in Kingston a substantiated and credible terror threat. But they also said there was no specific date or target. Where do they draw that line in taking something that may be an idea or a plan and being able to charge someone with a terror-related charge?
Yeah, I mean, so these are cases where you would say they're more aspirational than operational. And it's important to note that we don't want people to have a working IED, you know, in a car, driving the car to the target. I mean, that would make it more operational than aspirational. So it does seem from all the information that we've received so far that the bomb wasn't even a working bomb at that point. And that's a good thing, right? We don't want to wait until it is a working bomb. So right now it's aspirational because, you know, the items are not in play, if you will.
Does that impact any way that it would go down the court system? Do they have to prove intent or that they would have had the ability to detonate a bomb?
Yeah, that's exactly what they would do. I mean, first, of course, they would look to see if they can prove a guilty intention. That's the first element of a criminal offense. And the second is taking steps to realize that intention. The courts are not going to care whether or not the individual could make the bomb or that the bomb wasn't completely. They'll just look to see that the person took steps, concrete steps, downloaded information, bought material, attempted to put it together. The criminal offense is realized.
Now, the RCMP says that the original tip about this case came a month ago from the FBI. Is that concerning to you that it came from outside of Canada? Should we be concerned that, you know, our government dropped the ball?
Yeah, you know, this was the same thing in the Aaron Driver case. Individual in London, you know, released a jihadi video. Basically, the FBI picked it up and, you know, kicked it back to the RCMP. Look, the Canadian authorities don't have the resources or manpower to do what the U.S. is doing. The U.S. has a gigantic machine that's scouring the internet, different platforms, and they're more able to pick up this information than we are. But the main thing is that they work hand in glove. The information is going to come to us regardless.
The one big question RCMP wouldn't answer today was whether or not this young man who was charged was acting alone or inspired by some outside group. Of course, the big question is this ISIS inspired or directed even, but we don't know that just yet. Still, this is a young person who is charged with directing someone to detonate a bomb. Your area of expertise is de-radicalization and radicalization. If that is at play here, can you speak to how young people even get, you know, lured into this kind of activity?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the whole process of radicalization is very complex, has nuances. There are different things that impact a person and that can motivate them into action. You know, a great little quote that I always use is, you know, ideology without grievances doesn't resonate, and grievances without ideology are not acted upon. So there is an ideological component and a grievance component, and I'm sure, you know, most of that will come out later. If I could just quickly on the, if it was inspired by other groups, and of course everyone is thinking ISIS, we're not going to hear any information until that kid gets to court and that information starts to come out, even if the information is allowed to be publicized. But what's interesting is that FinTrack was involved, and they're usually involved when there are large money transactions, and so that's something that kind of made me interested. Why would they be involved, and what kind of money has been transferred, and by whom and for whom?
Just really quickly before we run out of time, I want to talk about the older man who was arrested but has now been released, and we've heard reports that he is from a Syrian newcomer family that was sponsored in Kingston. What do you think that does, even though he's now been released? What do you think that does to Canadian perceptions of our safety after having brought refugees in?
Yeah, I think people should not read too much into that. They want to expect Syrian refugees to have like zero crimes, and yet, you know, there are crimes happening all the time. You know, there are more, like I was saying just recently in another conversation, just last November, there were over 120 people arrested with 500 charges on child porn in Ontario. And they were mostly white people, right? So we shouldn't get involved in this kind of race-based statistics. The vast majority of Syrian refugees are law-abiding. We've taken 30,000, and at most we have 10 people that have been implicated in crime. So I think that's still very low. But you know, Canadians should be a little more educated as to, you know, what the situation for Syrian refugees is.
All right, thanks so much for joining us. We will have to leave it there. And as we said, so many more questions still left to be answered in relation to this situation.